All right. I love Tanner's introduction. Can everybody hear me okay, by the way? His introduction is great. He leaves the part of the story out where we showed up late. We got in trouble. Tanner just pretended he didn't know us, and we took all the heat for it. But we'll tell that story another time. But yeah, so again, my name is Dave Waknuk, University of Lethbridge. Yes, 9 days as the head coach. I have it all figured out. So it's all easy from here on in. So I was a college coach for 10 years up in northern Alberta. Came down south 3 years as an assistant, and then just took over a week or two ago with our head coach on medical leave. So it's been kind of a crazy week, but this has worked out great. I look forward to this clinic all the time. We just played against University of Regina tonight, and the coach that beat me is over there, so I won't be taking questions from him. But I'm really excited to be here. What I want to talk to you about is year-long season planning for high school. Now, how many high school coaches do we have here? Show of hands. Oh, so a bunch, okay. And then do we have junior high coaches as well? Any elementary coaches or youth coaches a little bit? Okay, so I'm going to be speaking about planning from a high school standpoint, but this can be applicable anywhere. I think planning is, people ask me sort of like, give me some tips on coaching, where can I have success? I think this is it. I feel like this is the secret to success in coaching, is having a plan. I think every coach in here will say their biggest enemy is time. Time is always, we don't have enough time to teach this, we don't have enough time to learn this, but I think you can create time if you spend the time to plan in advance. Right now, we're all sort of getting into our seasons. Some of us we've just started preseason. Some of the high school coaches haven't started yet. I would take the time. It might take a day, it might take a week, it might take 2 weekends, but it is worth it because this is the backbone of what you're going to do. And if you have a plan and a solid plan, this is something that will actually save you time as you go during the year. The best quote that I always like, I saw Stan Van Gundy talk about this, and he just said, success is where preparation meets opportunity. It's not his quote, but he has it up when he was with Detroit. They had it all over the place. Success is where preparation meets opportunity. I believe that is exactly it. People that are successful, it doesn't happen without a plan or a reason or a purpose. And I think for everybody here, I would say, you need to have a plan for your season upcoming. Now, those that have taken NCCP probably have seen YTP's yearly training plans. They're the big spreadsheets. They have all the colors and all the charts. If you use that and that's good for you, then I would say keep using that. But if you're not someone that's planned before, or if you just say, man, that's too confusing for me, then it's as simple as typing it up, writing it out, whatever it is, putting it down in front of you. I think you have to start with the 5 most important things: the who, the what, the when, the how, and the why. This will work for you. If you start with the big picture result in mind and work back. So what do you want to do this season? Of course, we all want to win. We all want to win our league championships, whatever it is. But where do we want to be there? That's going to be our what, our who, our when. That's going to give us a chance to say, that's the end. How do we start this thing? How do we get down to that path? So Tanner talked about, I've coached college, I've coached university. Me taking over in this last 9 days has been, I've been reading my own notes basically, because it's been planning and trying to put some things together. I also do provincial team. So that comes, as Coach Bree knows, that comes in a microwave. That's a fast season, but you still need to have peaks, you still need to have learning, you still need to have competing, all those things that are in it. This year with Alberta, we went a 3-week season essentially. 2 weeks of training camp, and then 1 week of nationals, and we were done. So we had 13 practices. We went no 2-a-days this year. We decided to not do it. We said we're going to go 2-hour practices, we're going to do half an hour in the classroom. That's our structure. It was very good for the athletes. It was tough for the coach. But the planning part of it is what set it up for us to make our quality work in our practices. So we said we were going to make sure we know where we're going. Where do we want to end up? We want to be our best at nationals. How are we going to get there? Let's start with it. I think this, once you have your kind of what and your where you're going to go, this will make your path easier to find your how, and most importantly, your why. Your how is going to come with it. You're going to say, how am I going to get there? How am I going to be a better defensive team? How am I going to be a better offensive team? That's easy. Your why. Why do you need to be good at these things? Why do you teach things the way you do? If I can do nothing else, and you take nothing else from my session tonight, go back and ask yourself questions about why do you do what you do. If the answer is, well, I've always just done it, then I think you need to challenge yourself deeper to think about this. I think this is the art of coaching part of it. You can't just expect to do the same thing over and over again. Coaching has gotten too good at too many levels that I think you need to have reasoning behind what you do. To start, I think the first thing you got to accept is, so I'm a planner. I love lists. I love planning. That's what I like to do. I have to accept that I can't plan every detail. I have to pick my main point of emphasis and focus on those. I think spreading your focus too thin is as harmful as not planning at all. If I'm trying to do everything, and we're going to have a 1-3-1, and we're going to have a 2-2-1 press, and we're going to have a 2-3, and we're going to switch on ball screens, go under, and all these things, we're not going to be good at anything. We're going to be okay at a bunch of stuff, and that won't work for you. I think at the high school level, I would say, your number is up to you, I would say 5 things. What are 5 things that when people watch my team play, that we're going to stand out at? We're going to be a great ball screen defense team, going to be a great transition defense team, we're going to be we're going to be a great rebounding team, whatever it is for you that works in your league. You all know the style you play. I am now down in Southern Alberta. I see nothing but zone. In every high school, junior high, every game, everywhere, I see zone. So if I want to be successful, how am I going to figure out zone defense? That's going to be for me if I'm a coach down there. You know what your league is. You know where you're at. Figure out where you need to go on that. And I really believe that planning is the art of coaching. I think this can separate you from the rest of the pack. I feel like if you have a good plan and you're willing to adapt with it, I think you can really separate yourself. And that's the quickest way for your program to improve. So basically start with your main objective. Ask yourself, what is your main objective of your program? What do you want to do? What do you want your kids to feel? What do you want your kids to know when you're done at the season? Also, what's your program's main goal? So I talked to a friend of mine, Dave Oldham is his name. He's coached 10 years at Spruce Grove High School in Alberta. Very successful guy. And I said to him, what did you do at high school? What was your main goal? And I loved what he said, and I wrote it down to share with you guys today. He said their main objective was getting kids to love the game and love being in the gym when you aren't there. I just think that is great. That's high school coaching. He wants kids to love basketball, to want to play basketball on their own and get better. Then I said to him, what was your program's main goal? He said to produce athletes to the next level of basketball. They wanted to produce athletes to play JV to varsity or varsity to post-secondary, whatever it was. When I asked Dave his number, they had 55 athletes in his time there, 46 played post-secondary. That is a number that I don't know that many high schools will compete with. That shows, but that was their focus. That might not be your focus. You might be coaching a junior high team. You may not be worried about producing kids to the next level, but you need to know what your objective is. What are you trying to do in the long run? Yeah, we're trying to win games, but what are we trying to do at the end of the season? What is my goal? So how do we plan? I think it's really simple. I think you can start with your season calendar. That's your skeleton. Everybody knows their league games. Everybody knows their schedules. Everybody knows that already. Start with that. Then you need to sit down with your 3 to 5, I would say 5, kind of key performance indicators. What are those main things that you need to be good at to be successful in your league? Then you need to be realistic. What is your team's strengths? What is your perceived weaknesses? You could say, hey, we have to be the best team at taking care of the basketball, but if I don't have a point guard, then I have to be realistic in that. So figure out where you want to go, what your schedule is, what you're good at, what you're weak at. And I would say with a short season, talking to Tanner, talking about what the high school season looks here, how little time you have, focus more on that strength column than the weakness column. What are you good at right now? What are you going to be? Are you a quick team? Are you a big team? Are you a good defensive team? If that's what you're good at, then be that. We as coaches, I know for sure with myself, say, look at that weakness column. It is long. I could add this all day. We're bad at everything. You're good at something. You need to be good at that. If you get really good at your strengths, that will hide some of your weaknesses and buy you some time. You don't have time to fix every problem your team has. I think that's a key for you coming out of this. I would then try to find the different parts of the season. So I think for me, you have your preseason, you have your league. I know talking to different coaches, some people have different parts of the league because you have your league season, Christmas break, you come back, you have your exam break, whatever it is, preseason, league, playoffs, off season. I think it's in that some type of combination of that. Know what your focus is going to be in those parts of the season. It's not the same. You're not doing the same drills, the same practice plans for all of those. High school off season, again, talking to people that were successful with that, I think that's tricky because what do? Do you just coach all your kids all summer? Do you tell them they have to play club basketball? I know with high school, you're going to have some kids that are going to be very invested. some that are going to play volleyball, some that just want to come for the casual part of it. I think the biggest thing is you have to let the athletes set their focus and be in the driver's seat. Let them make their choices. Ask them what they want to get, what they want to improve on, where they want to be as a basketball player next year, and then you're there as a resource. If they say, hey, coach, I want to get better at shooting, you can say, hey, well, there's these camps, there's this club team, provincial team tryouts, whatever it is, help them find that. That builds the trust. I think you demanding you have to get 100 shots up and 500 shots, that's how we lose kids in off seasons. Let them find what their path is, but you're going to help them get there. That's going to build the trust, and you might have kids that just say, hey, I'm just here to be casual and I'm just here to kind of come play and have some fun. That's fine too, but you're going to have kids that you want to get to the next level. You've got to let them have control of their season. I think one of the biggest things I see with Basketball Alberta, the problem with the elite kids in our province are they're playing so much basketball. Our kids had at our team, club team, spring team, a personal trainer, a personal skills coach, which is a new thing sweeping everywhere, all these things, and it's like, where is your time to be a 16-year-old kid? Where's your time to be a 17-year-old kid? So understanding that part of it. But I think really, I would say the coach sets the schedule from November to March for high school. Let your athletes set the schedule from April to the rest of it, to April till September. Let them play volleyball, let them play whatever they want to play, but encourage them to reach out and find some of the assets that you have in your community. Okay, things to consider, things I just talked about in your planning. Athlete load. How many teams are your kids on right now? We had a girl that was on the Alberta team. She had played basketball nonstop. She was literally playing in Slovakia. She was all over the place for the national program. She's coming back. We have to treat her differently as the kid who's been sitting around for 3 weeks waiting to play basketball. Figure out the load of your athlete. How many other sports do they play? What are their other commitments? Your league schedule is already there. Also think about your stresses of school with your high school athletes. That's going to affect your performance. Practice the game ratio. How many practices are you having to how many games you play? I think that's important for you to know and figure out. I think you have to look at it, and some of you get into February, gets to be a pretty heavy game schedule, I know, for Alberta high school. So how many practices are we getting there? We could say that February is going to be when we get better at everything for the playoffs, but if we have 3 hours of practice or 1 hour a week, then we can't get better at that stuff. So understanding what our ratio is on that. Then you have to figure out your own schedule. I'd like to say that everybody here can be a professional coach and just coach all the time, but you can't. You have families, you have your own stressors, you have your own jobs. Those that are teaching, that are also coaching, I think those are people that I really respect, because that's not easy, but you need to plan that in. You know when your busy load comes at work, you know when your busy times are, put your time into this plan as well. And then I think you have to make sure that you're changing your intensities. Your focus based on schedule, and when are you peaking? So we talk about peaking in performance. You can't be a 10 out of 10 performance the whole way through. It just doesn't work. You need to find times that you're peaking. So how are you going to build that in what you're teaching, and how you're playing, and what your training is? How are you going to peak at times, and when do you need to peak? And we'll talk about that in a second. I think the four main aspects in planning are this: physical, mental, technical, tactical. Physical, mental, technical, tactical. I think as a coach, those are the things that you have to be aware of. Physical, what are you focusing on? Do you have a strength and conditioning program? Do you have a coach? Do you not? If you want to do conditioning, I would say conditioning in high school is do it in a drill. Yeah, it's great to do, one player just told me the other day they did it with their coach. The first practice was 60 sideline touches or something crazy like that. How much time of that is with no basketball in their hand? The whole time. Find your conditioning through changing your intensity. If you want to say, hey, I need to get my kids in shape, or we need to get better cardio, pick up your intensity in practice. Go more reps, go less breaks, go more transition, whatever it is. I would say stay away from just say we're going to run, or we're just going to grind them into it. Just change your intensity. Find your different focus in your drill. The mental side of it, I think that's a big piece of it. That's a piece of your plan you need to have. What are you doing for leadership? What are you doing for team cohesion? Are you setting goals? I think you have to have that stuff incorporated into it. I think athletes now have gotten way more familiar with sports psychology, and I think they need that. So is that into your plan? The technical part of it. We talked about the 5 things that are most important. How are you putting that into practice every day? If you say you're going to be the best zone team, or the best rebounding team, or the best ball control team, what is that? What are you doing in your practice? I have coaches that say that, man, we just play, we have to go against zone all the time. Well, how much of your practice is man-to-man defense? Everybody here probably plays a ton of man, but if I know I'm playing a lot of zone, am I spending equal parts zone defense or going against zone that I am man? Ask yourself that, because I bet you're not. I bet you're doing way more man, but if you're going to play 20 games in a year and you're going to play C2-3 zone for 98% of it, how much of it are you working on? You know, if you're worried about turning the ball over, how much time are you spending on it in practice? And I think learning versus competing, I think that's a big part of it. How much are you teaching to how much are you allowing to compete? I think that's every coach has to find the balance, and I think that's the biggest challenge at high school. You saw these kids today, they just want to play. Chris was trying to be as patient as Chris gets, which is not very patient. See, if you know not, so I can say that. But they just want to play. So how much time are you spending teaching and learning and teaching your motion offense? How much time are you letting them be players and letting them play? I think that's a big balance, but that needs to change as the season goes on. The learning and competing needs to be in there, but the balance has to shift as we get in the playoffs and more games that way. The tactical part, I think a lot of us adapt strategies in a reactionary way. I think we go in and we get pressed and we go, man, we're terrible at press break. Let's put that in. Well, why not sit down at the start of the year and say, I know we're going to get pressed. I know we're going to turn it over. Let's build into practice every day, every week, whatever it is. Let's build in ways to break pressure. Let's build this from the start. Why wait until we turn it over 35 times and say, okay, now we're going to fix it? I think too many times coaches do that. They wait for it to fall apart before they put it back together. Get ahead of it. You know your league, you know your style, you know your team. Put those things in that are going to help you be successful. Okay, so a little bit more now into this kind of the season planning part of it. I think the preseason part, you have to get some feedback from your athletes. Ask them what they want. I think athletes nowadays really want to be a part of this process of getting better, having open communication with them. Ask your high school athletes, what do you want to get better at? Find out what they want to work on. Give them some of that. Give them some of that feedback. That'll build the thing I said at the start that I was told about wanting your kids to love the game. If you're giving them pieces that they see that are important, they will love the game of basketball. That's a huge part of it. Let them have some feedback into it. I think, as we touched on before, you have to build the peak at points of the season. You can't peak all year long. What are you doing to build rest? Intensity change right before you peak. What are you doing with peaking? So in Alberta High School, I think we start a little bit sooner than what Tanner was saying with Saskatchewan. I think you guys start middle of November-ish, right? So I think BC has no rules, according to Rich. They just start whenever they want. But so find out when that part is. When are you going to peak? I think talking to high school coaches in Alberta, they're thinking of peaks. There'll be a peak in late December. There'll be kind of a right before they go away for Christmas. They'll kind of work through November and hit their peak there. Then they go away and they disappear for Christmas and exam break. And then they want to peak in March. For you guys starting a little bit later, is that in December? I don't know where that is. But find out where your peaks are. I think that's probably where they're going to be close to. So what are you doing to build to that? How are you going to slowly build that up? How are you going to add to your offense, add to your defense, add to your intensity, and build that to a peak so that you're your best in December? And then learn from that and say, when we come back in January, we're going to build the same thing to March. How are we going to peak to it? We can't be a 10 out of 10 the whole season long. So we're going to have to build our way up to it. I think also the other thing to actually think about is you think about peaking as an athlete. So when are they feeling their freshest? When are they feeling their best? Realize that you may have a kid on multiple teams. So I talked about the kid I had that was on the junior national team and the Alberta team. Well, they're peaking in June because their competition is there. I'm getting her back. I want her to peak in August. Her club team is peaking her in September. Then her high school team is peaking her in October. She's playing at that high intensity, that high every time. So when is that time for that kid to rest, to actually come back and say, okay, I get to come back down from this intensity. I'm at my best right now, but I can't operate this high. I have to come back down. So think about that as well. Season tactics in high school. I think coaches try to outsmart themselves too early. I see so many tournaments in December where coaches bring their whole team in and they say, okay, we're going to play this team in the final. We're going to watch them in December. We're going to have kids take notes and we're going to watch them. We're going to break everything down. I would say in high school, don't worry about the opponent until late February. Worry about yourselves from November to February. Why worry about what they're going to run and put this idea in the kid's head that, oh my gosh, this team, they run this ball screen and we have to break this ball screen down. No, you probably have to figure out your own stuff. You need to figure out your own defense, your own way of offense. You need to work on your own stuff before you worry about your opponents. So I would say in your high school year, you got to go November to February is about us and what we're good at, and then middle of February to your March playoffs is how what we do well is going to work against that opponent. Don't worry so much about who you're going to play. Worry about getting yourself to be the best. I would also say in high school, if I'm somebody that has some trick stuff, so I have some zone stuff, I have a 1-3-1 that I like, I have a trap somewhere, I wouldn't bring that in until January. Why put it in December? Why put it in November? You can teach it in January. January has a lot of exam break. You might have a lot of practice time. Work on that stuff then. Get better at that stuff, but build your basics in November and December. Get good at what your core part is, because those gimmicks in every level will only work so long. I've seen coaches spend all this time on, okay, we're a man-to-man defense team, but man, we're going to 2-2-1 press and back into this and that. And your teams will figure it out in your league, especially good high school. They will figure it out. So I think, now if that's who you are, if you're a 1-3-1 team the whole way through, you're a 3-2 team the whole way through, then be that. But the little wrinkles that you try to put it in later and work on it at that point. This is a quote that I always like to pass on. It was actually a quote from a coach who I considered a coach that just knew a ton. And he said to me when he was done his career, he said, coaching matters very little about what you know. It matters on what you can transfer to the athletes. It doesn't matter that I have 65 zones in my head and 500 baseline out of bounds plays. What can they pick up? So I think always go back to that point. I think also January is a good reset point for yourself. If you have that exam break time as a high school coach, go in and kind of figure out what's working, what's not working, and setting yourself up for the rest of it. I also think in late season, a lot of that has to be talked about is how are you tapering practices back? Are you practicing the same length, the same intensity? Be aware of that. That training load part of it is a big piece of this. And that's even at the junior high level, I think, where is your intensity at? So when we talk about peaking, are we just going a ton of transition, full court drills all the time in late February? Well, our conditioning might be good. We might be okay. So what can we do to make sure that we're at our best at the end of the season? So maybe that's going to be just working on systems. Maybe that's going to be, when does our skill work come in? I think we have to look at those parts, and I can't stress that enough. Practice planning. Tanner talked about how I talked about that last year. I think practices are the bricks of your foundation of planning. Practices are everything. I think your practices cannot be something where you show up and just roll it out and play. I don't think that works. I think you have to have a strategy and a plan for your practice. There has to be, and there's a lot of things you can do with it. But I think ultimately is what's in your practice that represents your why. When we started with that of who we are and what do we do, what is in that practice? So if I walked into your practice and watched your practice for 15 minutes, I should get an idea of your identity. What you are as a team, what you stand for as a coach, I should be able to know that stuff, but is that in your practice? I think those practices are where you have to map that out. Maybe you don't know what your practice looks like in February, but I think the coach that knows that that's going to be the focus or the intensity in February is the coach that's going to be successful. I think changing the intensity of practice through drill selection, through time of drill, through the focus and order of the drills, all those things can change. So you can run, I would say you shouldn't have the same practice plan in November that you have in February. You shouldn't have the same practice plan in November that you have in January. Practices shouldn't be the same. Now, I'm not saying you have to go learn 55 new drills and change the way you coach. Maybe you change the length of the drill that you really like. Maybe you change the focus of it. Maybe you scored it differently. Maybe you set it up differently. I don't know what it is for you, but I think you have to change up your practices because you're going to get different things out of it. And I think that's what you can do. You can take 5 drills and run them all year, but I think you can make changes in them that can get different outcomes of what you want out of your practices. And I think this is the big one for me, quality over quantity. I talked about it this summer with Alberta. We went away, we used to do 4 hours of practice a day with a 2-hour break in there. We would do that for 10 days, and we would just pound the kids into the ground. And by Wednesday, it would come and I would cancel the 2 days and we'd shorten this one and take that one off. This year was kind of flying without a net a little bit. We went into these practices, 13 court sessions, 2 hours. I had a ton of stuff to play. I had a really young team this year, and it was probably my best summer because I had to find a way to coach on the fly more. So for you coaches that have an hour of practice, you may not have a chance to break down the motion offense like Chris was showing. You may have to coach it on the fly a little bit. You may have to, we have to use video a lot more. You have to find different ways. But I'll tell you, for those 2 hours of practice we had every day with those kids, the quality was off the charts. From start to finish, our intensity was high, our compete level was high. This was the first year in 7 years of Alberta I never had to stop and say we have to work harder, why don't we work harder, the speech that we all give every year. I didn't have to do it because the kids were fresh, they were excited to play. And yeah, there was things that we weren't great at come nationals, for sure. But we stuck to our strengths and we said this is what we're going to do. And I think in my eyes we overachieved because we just kind of found a way to flow through it. So as a coach, we talked about, how do you teach it? Do you teach the breakdown drill first? Do you teach the whole part first? We kind of had to give the concept and put it out on the floor, and then we had to error detect and correct as a coach on the fly. And it was tricky, but I tell you, we got a lot in a short amount of time. So you can find your style of it, but I'm telling you, if you only have an hour or two of practice every week, you're not going to get everything in. That's why you pick your 5 most important things. You can go live with some things and still teach. You can get things on the court and less of this. What I'm doing is talking or drawing it on board, and you can teach on the fly a lot more. If you try it, I think you'll see results that way. I also think it's important with your planning, figure out your off-court stuff. So I know at the university level, we spend a lot of time worrying about fundraising and staff and all that stuff. If you have a high school team, use the resources you have. Maybe someone's dad has access to something where your team can do team bonding. Or maybe you have somebody that's in the community that's a former player that can come in and be your assistant. Look for those little things and resources. I think that's the hidden gem in high school coaching. You don't have a lot of time, you don't have a lot of resources in a lot of these places, but you do if you ask around and find that. So I think having a plan for the off-season stuff is important as well. And then the other piece is, I think you have to know your own coaching philosophy. What's important to you? What makes this whole plan work, what makes this whole vision of our schedule, our 5 keys, our strengths and weaknesses, how are we going to get there, our mental, our tactical, our technical, all that stuff I just talked about is really who I am as a coach. And how do I lead? What's important to me? When am I going to put that into my program? The one thing I think was really interesting, I read an article where they talked about peaking as a coach. When are you going to be your best as a coach in your season plan? When do you need to be at your best as a coach? So if you're someone, I have a friend who coached, he's a very, very good coach, but he was coaching a junior high team. And he got into the league championship, I think. But all year, they just ran one inbounds play, and they just ran it, and they just tried to get kids to understand movement and space and whatever. And they had one inbounds play, and they played this team, they lost it by 40. And they tried this one inbounds play. He said, it's a screen-the-screener play, so it was nothing fancy, but it was screen-the-screener. In junior high, heads were exploding. They ran it. I think they literally could have just threw it off someone's foot and ran that play. They scored every time, and then that worked. Those gimmicks, those tricks, those things like that, or you putting your knowledge into it, when do you want that to have its most impact? I think you need to think about that of you as a coach. When do you get to sort of peak yourself? How are you going to be at your best when your team needs you the most? This is one of the biggest pieces too that I've went into the advanced coaching diploma course. It's kind of a NCCP type of course, and one thing they really push you on is they're really pushing you on, of course, on planning and all these things, but really the evaluation part of it. How many times in a year do you sit down and say, was that successful? And I think a lot of us maybe do it at the end of the year. We look back and go, okay, was that a good year? Was that a good team? But how many of you actually have checkpoints set up during the year where you evaluate what you're doing during the season? How do you know that your practices are working? How do you know that that system fits your style? How do you know that you pick the best kids at tryouts? I think these are questions that you should ask yourself, because I think it does a lot of self-reflection. It makes you think a lot about your own philosophy and your own self. But I think it's something that's super important is, how do we know that this is working? How do we know that this has worked? And I think that's another layer of it. But if you can figure out a way to say, that's the right offense, I picked the right kids, we're practicing the right way, and we have ways to do that, that's huge. How do you do that? I think it's really figuring out what's important to you. I think there's There's no right or wrong. I can't come in and say, yeah, that's a check mark or that's an X. But I can say, hey, myself as a coach, we really want to make sure that we're going to have a transition element into it. Transition D is important. Transition offense is important. So when I set up my season plan, I'm going to say, well, to be transition, we have to have spacing. We have to have good rebounding. We have to have a look when we get down the floor. Whatever it is, it's a checklist. Then I can go in and I can watch tape of practice. I can walk into my gym and I can go with my checklist and say, yeah, we got spacing, we got rebounding, we got good action, we're good right now. You need to be honest with yourself and find out during the season if it's working. Don't wait till the end and be that coach that says, oh man, if I would have just changed this. If I would have just went under the ball screen instead of over. Police yourself and ask yourself why during the season are those things working? Why aren't they working? Find out those answers. I think that really is a big piece of a successful season. Really the conclusion part of it is simple. Planning doesn't mean that it's all going to happen, but it'll lessen your time dealing with adversity. So it's not going to, if I have every detail planned, I have bad news for you, it's not all going to work that way. But when things go wrong, I'm always going to have my plan to go back to. And again, like I said, it can look any way you want it to look. I've given you a lot of information today. I give you a lot of things to think about. But you got to take this, and this clinic is fantastic because you're going to leave here with a ton of defensive ideas, a ton of offensive ideas. Already today with the 2 speakers, it's already drills, and I'm thinking in my head, okay, these are things that I can put in. But what do you do with them when you take them out of here? They need to go into a plan. They need to go into a bigger picture. And I think what I'm telling you today is think bigger. Don't think of it as I'm just coaching a high school team and I show up to coach it. If you want to be successful, you want your kids to love being in the gym, you want your kids to play at the next level and do all the things that everybody here wants them to, think about it bigger and think about a plan. And I think if you can do that, I think you can see things change quicker for yourself. A strong program knows who they are and where they're going. Make your program a place that athletes want to be part of. Those were words that were said, Gino Oriema, said it at a clinic, and I think those are so powerful. A strong program knows who they are and where they're going. It's absolutely true. UConn women, one of the most successful programs in sports, they know who they are. And some kids don't fit that style, and some coaches don't fit that style, and they get that, but they know who they are and they know where they're going to go. Who are you as a high school basketball program? Think of it bigger than just coaching 12 kids. Who do you represent? Where do you want to go? And then make your program a place that people want to be a part of it. How are you going to do that? How are you going to be a learning environment? How are you going to get that kid to fall in love with basketball? To get them in the gym on their own in the summer? To get them playing on teams? I think those are the things you have to ask yourself. So I gave you a lot of information. I gave you a lot of ideas. The thing you saw that I'm not giving you is a step-by-step, this is how you do it, because it's different for everybody. You're going to go away, Dave Taylor over here is going to go away and plan a different way than I am. And that's the way it should be. It has to be personalized. It has to be yours. It has to have your stamp on it. But I'm going to tell you, I think you can't go into your season without a picture of what you think it can be and where you want to go. Don't just show up and coach it. Show up with a plan, show up with a purpose. Does anyone have any questions on what I said? Yeah, Bree. Yeah. So for us, I mean, it depends. So I'll use the provincial team, for example. So we really worried about turnovers. We really wanted to take care of the ball. Rebounding was going to be a big one for us. We wanted to get post play into our offense. I'm trying to think of the other ones. I think there was there was a ball pressure, so ball screen defense. So like those things for us at that national tournament, we felt like those are the things that are going to make us successful. Take care of the basketball, win the rebounding battle, find high percentage shots. Those are the things that are going to separate the teams that win and lose. So those were our 5 things. But they change all the time. They change on who the group is. They change in the season. Here at the University of Lethbridge, we'll have a whole different set. I can't tell them because Dave Taylor will write down notes and figure it all out. That's what he's doing right now. But I think for your own league. They can, yeah. So that I think you have to be realistic with that. You might say that, man, ball control is so important for us. But maybe it's not. Maybe you find a different style. Like I think that's a great point that Bree makes. And you coach U15, you know how that works. You might think of when you go to U15, we're going to be this style and this play, and then you show up and these kids are all over the map. The U15 tournament was a lot of fun. I was a U16 coach and I watched SAS team play Alberta, and it was a wild game because these kids are figuring out who they are as people, I think, in the game. And you don't know what team's going to show up. So you might think, we're going to be dynamite at breaking pressure. And you might have a team comes in their first press and they self-explode. So be flexible in your planning, and that's a great point. Be flexible in what you need to do, who you want to be, where you want to go. Be honest with yourself too. Any other questions? Yeah.
How do you choose those five, like regarding your players, or more like what you want to focus because of your weakness? Or?
Yeah, so how do you choose what your keys are? How do you choose who you want to be? I would say what we do is, and I don't want to do it because Dave's in the room, but we'll look at what the good teams do. So we looked at stats and we say, what do the Reginas do? What do the U of S do? What does the Calgary do in our league? And what can we do? And when we look at nationally, the McGills and Carltons and all these teams, what are they doing? So we have the opportunity of having stats at the university level. I would say I always want to look at who the best are and what do they do? What are they good at? Why are they so successful? Look at those programs, and that might give you an idea. Go back to your own experiences. If you've coached for a few years, you know what has hurt you in the past, you know what's helped you in the past, you can look at that. I think you have to think of it, what is the best for your collective? Because if you start to break it down too specific, where what's best for number 5 and what's best for number 12 and what's best for, that's going to be too big. But a general idea of what the best teams do and what makes them successful, that'll give you a start point. And then I get in the season, I would feel it out and say, that's maybe not for us. So some teams at the high national level, they will press and they'll turn teams over. I have to be honest and say, we just don't have the bodies to do that. So we're not going to focus that way. But that's at least made me have the conversation of, do I want to be this style? Can I be that style? So again, I would go back and think about, and you're going to get some ideas out of here, go back and think about what's going to make you successful this year. Any other questions? So in closing, because I know it's late and I think it's fantastic that you guys, this many people are out late on Friday night listening to a guy who lost to Regina by 9 tonight, listening to him talk. But I think what I'm going to say to you is, my mentor coach told me at the start of my journey, so I've done post-secondary women for 14 years, he said, the day you stop learning is the day you should stop coaching. I think for me, these clinics are great because I can't wait for tomorrow. I was here with coaches before, and they were here last year, and someone like Rich and the people that are coming in are so good at what they do. So I would say for you, keep adding and keep trying with this stuff. This planning piece, these pieces, this is the art and the science of coaching that I absolutely love. This is what I really like about coaching. So try things, make errors, but be honest with yourself and keep adding to yourself and keep pushing yourself to learn more too. I think that's where you see the best coaches. That's why they're successful. They're not scared of mistakes. So try some things. If you don't like it, change it and keep going. I'll be around here all weekend, of course.